cherished nephew that he can hardly remember the name of. Yeah, so hey, hello everybody.
Hello.
My name is Sammy Uyama. I'm from North Carolina in America. And did you hear some like whining going around in the back of the room at some point?
Whining and dining?
No, whining and crying.
Ah, whining and crying.
That's my wife, and our daughter is in the back right there. Hello there. Yeah, so let's see. We were blessed in 2009, and 2.5 years ago we moved to Korea. So that's where we live now. And you heard Uncle Dave correctly. We were in the middle of a 8-week tour to Europe, which is a really long time. So that's why I brought my family with me, because it was too long for me to be here. And yeah, it's such a joy to be with you guys here. Secretly, this part of the world was the most excited I've been to visit everywhere. I love Scandinavia, and I'm just falling. My wife and I came yesterday, and we're just falling in love with this place. And yeah, thank you for having us. Yeah, so it's kind of what High Noon, just to recap what Uncle David was talking about. This is
Very comfortable.
So sex was meant to be this really joyful, amazing thing, right? And it's not that right now. And so there hasn't, and part of that is that there hasn't really been anyone to be role model or to model what healthy, heavenly sexuality actually looks like. People don't really see it in their families. People don't really see it in society. And even not just today, but it's all throughout history. It was something that was never, even religion had such a influence in people's lives, but that was also somewhere that you can never go to understand and reconcile these things that we deal with, these sexual things. It's the reality is that it's such a natural, normal part of life that it's for procreation. But looking to faith, it always seemed like such a dirty, sinful thing. And even the concept of the Immaculate Conception, right, which is when Mother Mary was impregnated with Jesus. This idea, the word immaculate, it's just that the word is unsullied, undirtied kind of thing. And there's always this connotation of sex is somehow bad. Right? And so that's a huge part of the education that was received, especially even just for me growing up. My parents were blessed also in 1982. My dad's Japanese, my mom's British. And we never talked about sex at all. And it was this very typical experience growing up. For us, was just you're watching a movie together, and the kissing scene comes on. Right? And what does your mom do? Right? She says, cover your eyes. Right? And then what do? You go like this. So yeah, that's how I grew up. We never really discussed any of these things. And so the natural result of that is that, for me, my parents were never a source to go to when I had questions about these issues. And so what we've seen is what many young people is naturally what they turn to is other places, their friends, and the development of the internet is more commonly Google. Right? It's such a very safe and comfortable place to get your questions answered. And the silence on this topic is, what people learn is so opposite of what sex can be and is meant to be. And it's not by accident, right? Just if you look at the attitude and reality of how people see sex today, it's completely just not just a little different, but 180 degrees. And this is by design, right? It's the thing that's most precious to God would be, of course, the thing that the opposite of God would want, what Satan would want to pull away from people. Right? And then sex became the thing to snare people from younger and younger age. And so that's why we address this topic of sexuality as an organization, is because how important it is to to life, to our lives as individuals, the growth of our characters. And but it's not. But you know, High Noon is not specifically just a pornography awareness or sex organization, so to speak. You know, so that's what I want to share with you. And you know, High Noon, even where this name comes from, it's not something. It's more than just the name of our organization, but there's a source to this. And you know, it comes from what your parents talk about, is this concept of High Noon. And Shifala says this really easily: High Noon is like a life without shadows. And so the idea being that, you know, when the sun's up here, right, then, you know, everything, there's no shadow. When the sun's over there, and it's shadow over here, vice versa, like that. And we started kind of digging into, you know, what does this concept imply? What, you know, what is the meaning of this kind of life? Right? And so it's something that we resonated with was how powerful this idea of being able to live in this way. And it's really more than anything what we found, what kind of life that we wanted to champion. And so, you know, like these shadows that True Father talks about, it's these kinds of things. It's the shame that we have, the secrets that we keep. Right? You know, these are the things that we feel that if other people knew this about me, you know, they would be shocked. They wouldn't be able to accept me. And these are the things that we see are so unlovable about ourselves, that we make so much effort to hide from other people. And this can cover many different topics. You know, this can be sexuality is a huge area where people experience these kind of shadows. Many things that people experience: depression. People experience, you know, these things that they feel they have no reason to be struggling with these things. And they feel guilt for doing so, and they feel unable to share about these things honestly because of how people might respond. And so and this is really the definition of hell, I think, is that the trap of keeping these things in our life is that we are unable to feel really connected to others. We always feel like we have to earn something, and that if people really saw what was going on, that we wouldn't be able to be, we would be unacceptable to them, would be unlovable to them. And then so it causes us to put on this facade of a life. And it teaches us that love is a conditional thing. Excuse me. I drink a ton of water, so I'm going to be taking breaks.
That's all right, have no shame.
You catch me on. We talk about unconditional love, true love, right? But you know, these things, they cause us to feel that we actually have to earn love. Because what we do is that we compensate for these things that we keep, right? And we feel that I have to, right? That I'm just how I am as it is just unworthy, right? So we make all these efforts to earn approval from other people, and you know, this is really how I lived my life growing up. Yeah, so like, I was a really, from all appearances, I was a really great person in my teenage years. Like, starting from a young age, I would do Hundoke on my own. Very impressive for a 13-year-old, right? And as I grew up, I would be involved in youth camps and elementary, middle schoolers, and leading them and guiding them, and being a good older brother. And it seemed like I did well in school, right? And you know, everything seemed to be going well. But all of this was secretly compensation for just trying to earn something from other people, because I felt so unlovable secretly inside, and I had so much guilt and fear of if people found out what was going on, really. And like for me, you know, that happened to be pornography. That was like this thing that really ate at my soul. And you know, I was exposed to porn when I was 12. I was at like a friend's house, and then he, you know, was at that age, would you Pokemon, Nintendo, and it's like what life is all about, right? And so, you know, I was at a friend's house one night, and these are the kinds of things we're doing. And you know, he just turns to me really casually. He's like, "Hey, Sammy, "Hey, do you know what porn is?" And I had no idea what he was talking about. I was like, "No, what's that?" And he was like, "What? Are you kidding me? You don't know what porn is? I don't believe you." And so I feel really embarrassed, right? Like, I was 12, he was 13. So, you can imagine that dynamic. It's like the older, cool kid, there's this thing he knows about, and I have no idea what he's talking about. And so it's like his life mission that night is to introduce me to the world of sex. So he explained to me how sex works, he explained to me he went to the computer, showed me pornography, explained how masturbation works. And this was an introduction for me. And just to give you an image, this is a 13-year-old teaching a 12-year-old about how sex works, right? So you can imagine it was very inaccurate in a lot of ways, right? And but that was the beginning for me. And it was very shocking, it was very fascinating also. It was a big word. It was something I had no idea existed. Suddenly it was fully opened up to me. Apparently all the adults knew about it, and finally I was let in on it. So I wanted to know as much as I could about this thing. So I had so much curiosity. And of course, my parents were not a place I could comfortably ask about these things. And so, I went online and I tried to learn as much as I could. And it was just fueled by this curiosity, and then experimenting with masturbation, and then, realizing you could put these two together. It's like a really nice combination. And then my life kind of developed like that. It was kind of like a background thing still. And then when I was 15, it really began to snowball and take over my life. I got my own laptop for the first time, and we got a Wi-Fi router in our house. Do you remember those days? And suddenly, of course, naturally, I had this accessibility that I didn't have before. And so it just began to snowball from there, and then I wanted more and more, and there was this unsatiable thirst that I had. And I began to really interrupt my academics. Like I'd have homework, I'd have to study for a test, and I'd be so distracted and spend the whole night looking at pornography. And I would want to do these really risky things, like I'd go to bookstores and I would steal magazines. I had a computer, I don't need a magazine, right? But it was just this like looking for this danger and this thrill of it. And given this whole time, I was still like trying in the prayer room doing okay. I was still doing like my little 21-day conditions. I was still involved in youth ministry. And just no one had any idea this thing was going on. And eventually my parents found out, you can imagine, and they took me out and they're like, "Hey Sammy, we had this conversation, we found pornography on your computer." And it was very, I just remember really clearly, like my heart just dropped, like that feeling. It was the worst, that was the last thing I wanted. And that was the thing I was most scared of in my whole life. And my fear, thinking back, was that, okay, they would be upset at me, be angry, and they would pack my bags and send me to Cheongpyeong for the rest of my life. That was like, I knew so clearly it was going to happen. And the end of that conversation, I don't remember the specifics of what were said, but I remember leaving that feeling that, oh wow, they actually care about me. And that they love me and want to support me. So it was actually a really liberating experience. It was this big dark secret that I had. And suddenly, someone knew about it and they still embraced me. And I was like so happy, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to quit this and I'm never going to do this again. And then, so we had a great conversation, but the problem was it ended there. And we never talked about it again. And it was kind of just this like, all right, it's taken care of kind of idea. And then so maybe a couple months went by and it was okay, but then slowly I began to get drawn into this world. Because I didn't have any good habits to protect me or to stay away from this, so I went back into my old routine. And then I relapsed fully, like pornography, masturbation, and it was so devastating. Because you can imagine this feeling of really determining to do something and then having someone really supporting you, and then just feeling like you totally let them down. And so I just felt like the last thing I could do was let my parents know, because of how disappointed they would be, and how much faith they put in me, they'd already forgiven me. So I just remember like, all right, so I made a mistake, but all right, I'm just going to do better now, and I'm just going to cover, I just tried to cover this up. Right? And then the result of that is, of course, I'm still like hooked by this thing, and then I messed up again, and then I used to do worse, and again and again. And it was just this spiral down where I just felt so disgusted with myself. And just really this hellish experience that no one knew like what I was dealing with. And if they did, then they'd just be disgusted. And so I turned to pornography to make myself feel better. And at that point, and then even just temporarily to something. And so it really just, and my life was totally wrapped up in this. And then we went through this process, and my parents would discover again somehow, and then we'd have this conversation, and then I would resolve again to quit and stop. And it went back, like it was like ping pong, just went back and forth like this. And then I just got to this point when I realized that I looked back at my life, and I looked at my academics, I looked at my, I'd grown a lot, I consider myself a really responsible person, I was dependable for organizing an entire workshop for people entrusted their children to me, right, to not have their kids die, right, during it for 4 or 5 days. And, but this one area, I felt like I'd made no progress. I was just running around in circles for years. And then something clicked in my mind that I realized that this attitude I had was, okay, I want to stop, but, I'm messing up. I guess when I get older, I'll just naturally grow out of it. I'll just get more mature, and I'll naturally just not struggle, or even, when I get blessed, then it won't be a problem anymore, and everything will be okay. And that was deep down kind of the attitude I had, and I realized that that wasn't the case, actually, in that if I didn't actually do something about this, then I would get blessed, potentially still struggling with pornography. I could even have children still struggling in this area, and that just scared me to death. And so I really resolved that I need to do something about this area of my life, and so I did. Anyway, so it became like a priority for me. And I went to my parents, and then I shared. And for the first time, always they caught me, right? So the first time, like I went to them, like I'm really struggling in this area, right? And I can't do it by myself. I've been trying for years, and so we created this kind of relationship where I would just, okay, there's an agreement. Like they knew I was gonna, and I could just share it honestly with them. And then they're expecting it, they're ready for it. So if I was struggling or had some urge, or even if I had messed up, then I could tell them. And so like sometimes my dad would pick me up from school or something, and we're sitting in the car, and then I would just share with him, like, yeah, I was, in school, there was this really cute girl, and she's like really pretty, and made me feel these things and think about this, and it was really awkward. It was like it's like so embarrassing to talk about these things with someone, let alone like your dad, right? And he would just sit there and listen. And so, all right, he's Japanese, right? So let me paint you the picture. He's a Japanese man, so he's like, and he say, God bless him. I'm so grateful that he didn't like say, oh, you need to do this, or try to make me feel better or lecture me. He just said, okay, thanks for telling me, like that. Right? And I felt such an amazing feeling to have this thing you're so ashamed of, and to share that honestly with another person, and have a shadow and bring someone in on that. And that was like such a growth experience for me. And I did a lot of other things, like I had to work on changing my habits and these things the ways I would access pornography, blocking myself out from that. And there's a lot of things I did, but the heart of it was like this relationship of honesty that I made. And that was really also the beginning of my faith, just really recognizing what real love feels like, not just like as a thought, but like in my bones. That I knew that it wasn't something I had to earn, or that I even deserved. I was given it as a grace. It was even, sorry, you're my baby crying. Right. And it was such a good training to bring into a marriage as well. I kind of developed this practice, and then naturally being able to create that kind of relationship with my wife as well, and kind of that being the foundation for a relationship. And so, these are the shadows that I experienced. And then when we talk about shadows, and naturally there's kind of like a light aspect. And so, what are those things that you experience? And it's really, I think, these things, this kind of sense, this experience of being authentic. And it's really this trust and experience of real love. And the amazing thing is that this is not something that you, it's not some, thank you guys for your patience. I know there's many settings where it'd be very inappropriate to have a baby crying in the back. Thank you. That you know, these things you don't have to hope that some amazing person, you stumble on them and they give you these unconditional kind of love, but this is something that we can access on our own. That through this experience of being honest and telling the truth about ourselves and letting go of the pretense that we hold up, that through that experience, that's the access to receiving these kinds of things. And then this is the experience of heaven, I think, is this connectedness of being fully seen and known and experiencing that kind of love. And so that's like this concept of what high noon really means to us and what we're really championing is this kind of life. And hold on. Edu, can you get Edu? It's her turn.
I think she's changing.
Okay, can you do that for her? So I also didn't want to give you, I didn't want to just hear from me, but my wife is also a really incredible person with her own story of growth and developing the courage to open up about the shadows that she has in her life. And I mean, she has her own struggles with pornography growing up, and it's a real growth experience for her to finally open up about that. And she just generously wants to share that with you, for what that's worth. And so I'm getting the...
Your daughter is extremely hungry and she has one source of food and it's not from you. So I might have to double back.
What?
Might have to double back.
Okay. Can I double back for this? Alright. So, okay, there's my wife, and just the summary, she'll share, give her a chance to share, but this concept of high noon is what the foundation for what's allowed my wife and I to really have an amazing relationship. And she's super awesome. I mean, she's really gracious and generous, and then she got married to like the caveman. It's just like, we're so, you know, but simply put, we're very different, right? And our experience was that what made our relationship what it is not this sense of chemistry, but was this common commitment that we had to being transparent with one another and to extending trust to one another, forgiveness, and being able to tell difficult truths to one another and sometimes be hurt and then to forgive. And that's such a strong foundation for us to how we relate with one another, and something I'm really grateful for. And what's allowed for just an amazing, so I've been married less 9.5 years now, and it's been really the most amazing time of my life. Just having a best friend, and more than anyone in the world, someone that really sees me and knows me for everything, all the ugly parts of myself as well. Right? You see the clean shaven Sammy, right? She sees the Sammy that hasn't left the house for 3 weeks, right? And hasn't showered in 2 weeks, right? Yeah. And that's made possible because of the foundation of honesty. And then, the things that I think everybody wants, universally, it's a no-brainer. Just say, oh yeah, I'd love for someone to embrace me and love me for everything that I am, and I could tell the truth, and they would, they wouldn't be angry or judgmental. It's obvious, right? And what's exciting is that that's not a relationship we just have to hope to find, but it's the kind of relationship that's possible to generate and to create, right? And it's the kind of relationship that any form of secrecy makes impossible, right? Because what happens is that when you have this thing that you keep, it becomes a condition. It becomes it makes the love you receive conditional. That's what I mean, right? And that someone can say, "Oh, I love you, thank you," and they can mean it from the bottom of their heart, so wholeheartedly. But you always are left with a question in the back of your mind, and it's like you say that, but if you really knew what was going on, would you feel that way? And that's this block that this form of secrecy creates. And then people, you can never experience real love until you seek to answer that question. Right? Say, would you still love me if you knew? And people live their entire lives never getting that answer. And so it's such a heartbreaking thing that people can go an entire life never feeling a real sense of connection. And so, that's what we found, like as an organization, the reason that we need to talk about this issue of pornography is because starting out from a really just a beautiful desire just to help blessed couples make a really nice relationship, really nice marriage, discovering how, what a block that this was, and how much this was hindering couples from creating that kind of relationship. And then what we just discovered is more than anything else going on in our blessed family community, this is the thing that's causing the most rift and creating the most shadows. So just as a rough context for why we feel it's so important to address this issue. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. So to talk about pornography. How are we doing so far? Okay.
Good. Two thumbs up.
Sorry. Alright. So the most fundamental thing about why pornography is suddenly such a huge topic is because of what pornography has become. The idea of pornography, or some form of it, has existed for many, many, many years, right? In terms of magazines, these kind of things, and just the internet completely revolutionized and evolved what pornography is able, or what it is, right? So, beginning 30 odd years ago. So up until that point, you're limited to, at most, videos, magazines, literature, these kind of things. But the idea of pornography was always something you had to go get. It was, and often you had to pay for it. Right? It's something you had to go find, and you'd finally get a hold of, say, a magazine, and then you'd go through it, and then when you're finished with it, then you had to repeat the whole process again. So there's a lot of barriers to accessing pornography. And some people, maybe they discover it in a friend's house or something like that. Anyway, it wasn't so available. And then just pornography allows you to get the internet allows you to get pornography from the bedroom, from the bathroom, on your phone. So basically it's become so accessible. It's become unlimited, and it's become free. This combination of circumstances is just totally created this spiral effect for pornography. And not just that, is that pornography, it was usually something that you had to intentionally go look for. But what pornography has become is it's really actively trying to hook and get you. Right? So many people's first exposure to porn is completely by accident. They're playing a game, or they're watching some anime kind of thing, and something pops up. Or they mistype, so they Google something pops up, and you're like, whoa, what is this? And it's not an accident, right? It's not like there's this porn and you accidentally, so it's created, something that's put there. And because there's a whole entire industry around trying to expose people and access people, to expose, especially young children, to these topics. And because it makes sense that the younger you hook someone on something like pornography, then the longer time period that you've got a consumer of your content, the longer time you have a customer. And so there's so much aggressive work being done to expose young children to pornography, specifically. And then, and so it's this thing that pornography became is people's concept of it still remained in this physical form of magazines and books and videos. And then no one stopped to take a look at, so what is internet pornography doing to people? Right? What is this easy access, this fast-paced, the way people consume porn nowadays is not just even one thing at a time. It's multiple screens. It's clips that last seconds, right? It's so fast-paced. And then it's something our brains were not equipped for. Our brains develop slowly over thousands of years to respond to stimuli at certain thresholds. Right? And then pornography just breaks through all those natural thresholds that you experience, that your brain would adapt to respond to. And just hundreds of images, thousands of, for a man, or women, of men just having sexual experiences, and no one stopped to think about what's that doing to your brain, right? Because it's not something you could even compare to in the past. You can't say, oh, how did something like internet pornography, how did it affect people 50 years ago, and how are they doing now? And we're just starting to catch up and look at, what is this doing? The people who grew up with this, people who've been exposed to this for decades, how is it affecting them? And so we're just starting to do this kind of research and recognize the impact that this is having. So I want to share some of that with you guys. And so basically, I guess this simple comparison is that pornography is very much just like what's called fast food. Right? It's this thing. It looks good, tastes amazing, but it doesn't. It slowly kills you. Right? Fast food doesn't have any proper nutrition for your body. Pornography, it's a cheap substitute for something else. And the danger in this is that because of how easy it is, and also because of how stimulating it is. You eat, what do they have here in Sweden? It's like, McDonald's, whatever, right? KFC. So, you eat this thing, and it's like, your mouth is going, whoa, right? It's like super tasty. None of that's actually happening in your mouth. All of that's happening up here. And then with these can't even say restaurants, or with these conglomerates, what they do is that they put so much sodium, sugar, salt, and to overstimulate, to create such an excess of flavor in these foods that your brain just goes haywire. And it's going, whoa, this is really good, and I want more of this. And it's the exact same thing that pornography does. It's like your brain's going, whoa, this is really amazing. It's like, I want more of this. Because of all these combinations of the ease of it, and it just becomes a substitute for something real. And that's such a danger of it, is how attractive it is. And then, basically what pornography does is it just hijacks your brain. Right? There's this part of your brain up in the front that has to do with reasoning, and has to do with decision making. And just like when someone who knows better than to just eat McDonald's continuously, but there's something going on here where they're just like compelled and pulled towards it. Pornography does the same thing. And what it does is it just hijacks these parts of your brain that learns to respond to reward, to respond to pleasure. And then this answers the question, how on earth could good people do such horrible things? And this is really like a mystery to people. It's like, how could a youth leader, someone who really just cares about other people, be watching such disgusting, really brutal things through pornography? Right? How could someone who like a DP lecturer, someone who understands God, who's really experienced God's heart, and God's pain, God's sorrow, and shares that with other people, how could they do something so horrible? Right? It's because this compulsion that pornography, and there's a lot of things going on here, right? And we have a limited time we can go really into this, but just this answers that question, that there's a lot going on. It's not just a matter of willpower, of morality, or of conscience, but there's really so much happening here. Yeah. All right. So this is one of the images that kind of launched this whole study into what are the effects of internet pornography. Right? Is that they did these brain scans, and then they could actually physically see what is that pornography changes the way your brain looks, which really shocked people. They didn't expect that this could be the case. And what was even more concerning was that the patterns that they see with someone who uses pornography, like really compulsive on a very unhealthy, considered unhealthy level, that their brain patterns recognize someone who has similar habits with alcohol, smoking, hard drugs, and basically these kind of addictive nature, they began to recognize these addictive qualities that pornography had. And so, this kind of like launched this study into we need to learn and understand more about what's really going on. And so like what pornography does is that it wires our brain in a way that has us to respond to, it sensitizes us to sexual stimulation. And so we see something, it becomes what you call like a trigger. And you become triggered by something, and then it's like an if A then B situation. So then you experience this thing, and then your brain goes, all right, this is the trigger. What needs to happen next is looking at pornography, etc., something like that. And so these paths, they get reinforced. It's like a road, and then the more you use it, then it becomes more and more developed. It becomes like a superhighway. And so this is what really, and so people get this really compulsive. They develop these. It's possible to develop these really compulsive natures of. Say if we're talking about a spectrum, like something on the far end of addiction would be very severe. Like if you experience the most extreme forms of addiction, you begin to have withdrawal symptoms, for example, and that your body physically, it physically responds when you don't have your stimulus, and then the other end of it would just be like some kind of compulsion. And so the brain is doing all these things to create these connections and to teach yourself to respond quickly to certain situations. And then, likewise, it's like the importance of time in this process is that overcoming pornography is not just a willpower kind of thing, but it's a reconditioning your brain and how you respond to these stimuli. And so like weakening these paths. And then, likewise, the less you use them, maybe they still remain, but then they become covered up and dirty, and then your brain doesn't connect and respond so efficiently. So that's one thing to people. And so, more importantly, like some of the ways pornography impacts relationships is that I've seen so strongly is how much it really blocks a person's relationship with God. It's like, I think the natural growth process is that a person, as they go through difficult experiences, then God becomes their source of, and pulls them through those challenges. And then, but then people begin to, and pornography is one example, and there's many things, but people begin to turn to crutches. They begin to turn to something else for comfort. And that becomes the thing that pulls them through difficult situations. And so people are beginning to worship these things. And so one of the dangers is that it stunts the maturation process. Is that people, they experience some challenge, they experience failure, or they experience anger, and then rather than kind of grappling with that and working through that, they look for comfort. And pornography is such an enticing form of comfort for people. And so then people, they physically grow, but emotionally, spiritually, they remain stunted. So it's possible to have, and this is happening generationally. So we have a generation of young people who are emotionally still children. They're unable to handle this the kind of difficult things that come up that are necessary for being a dependable parent, for raising a little human being. Right? That takes a certain level of what I'm experiencing, which takes something I feel very lacking in sometimes, right? It's like things can be, you hit a threshold, right? And for me, the threshold is when it's like 4 in the morning and like I'm trying to sleep, leaning up against the wall, like this. It's like, pornography has a huge effect on marriages, which is deeply connected to why we're addressing this issue. And some of the reasoning for that is that porn, what it does, it's got these kind of elements to it. Pornography never says no. It's unlike a spouse, right? It's always there for you. It's always accessible, and so 24/7, right? This idea that I had that when I get blessed, married, then sex will be available, right? It's such a misconception, right? even when you're in a relationship and this, like, the practicalities of life, someone gets sick, pregnant, I've discovered how much pregnancy hinders an intimate relationship, right? A baby, right? All these kinds of things, they come up, right? Pornography, none of that exists inside of that. And then, you know, also pornography never gets old. Right? If you look, you can be watching porn for a decade, and the actors and actresses you're looking at, they're still the same age as 10 years ago. And it's just, if you don't think about this deeply, it's just because, you know, people come into the industry and then they get chewed up and spit out, and continuously. And so you have this concept of stimulation of sex is that it's attached to a certain appearance, right? And that can be really dangerous for a relationship. And basically it comes down to like the fantasies, psychologically, right? It's just we're attracted to things that are easier than things that are more challenging. And the unfortunate case is that in life, overall, things that really we need and are good for us, they just happen to be harder, right? It'd be so much easier if broccoli tasted better than chocolate, right? But for some reason or another, it's and it's the same thing sexually, right? It's so much easier to turn to fantasy, to create this world inside of our mind, than to deal with the challenges of creating a relationship. You know, it's like this, so, you know, this impact it has. It's so, pornography, it rewards running away from something rather than being there and resolving that challenge inside your marriage. Right? And in pornography, it just, inevitably, it trains you that my sexual urges and my sexual desires are for my own benefit. Which is, you know, what your parents teach is that the owner of the sexual organ is the spouse. Right? And so this beautiful concept of that, my sexuality is for the sake of another person. Right? And this is completely flipped around inside pornography. And that it really becomes a third person often in a relationship. And that your intimate relationship isn't this unique thing that you create with another person. You know, it becomes a game of modeling something, wanting what you have to be more like something else. You know, if my spouse could act more like this, look more like this, be more like this, you know, rather than focusing on, you know, what is it that, you know, you're a unique person, I'm a unique person, you know, how could this look like? And then against society, kind of widespread some of the impacts that pornography is having. Is that it's really so strongly shaping our culture. It's kind of a fast-paced idea of just highly disposable, like. You're saying. I was thinking. I kind of blanked for a second because I was thinking, how am I going to make it through the rest of this talk? Alright, so one thing I want to share with you. So The Atlantic, it's a magazine, and they do these really in-depth studies. And they did one about the climate of sex in today's world. And so they did many interviews and really investigative journalism. They discovered some really interesting things. And just looking at today's world and how more than ever before, it's never been this acceptable to have sex. Like, to talk about sex, to have casual sex. Right? It's never, you know, probably never before, like, as in large societies and cultures, that it was as acceptable as it is now. And not only that, how it's never been easier to have sex than it is now. Now, they have entire applications dedicated to allowing two strangers to come together and have sex together. And it's, you know, people, there's venues, there's places you can go where the expectation is that you're going to meet someone interesting and you're going to leave that, like in a clubbing kind of, or partying this kind of thing, you're going to leave there with the intention of having sex. And then the availability has never been more acceptable, never been easier. Yet, given all that, the real shocking thing they discovered was that young people are having less and less sex. Right? This is like, you know, people think, oh, the corruption of the, you know, the young people are at it, and all, but they found it to be the opposite. They do these studies of high school students or you know, teenagers. The average age of losing their virginity is going up. More and more people are graduating high school, never having had sex. In college, and just across the board, the number of sexual encounters people have is decreasing. And then so, you know, you could look at this and go, oh yeah, that's good, right? Great. Right. But then, so, you know, we have to go deeper than that. We have to look at what's causing this, you know. Depending on that, this could be a good thing. You know, one of the dangers also that they've discovered, the amount of sex happening within marriage is also decreasing, on average, from 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And that's a little more alarming. Right, so kind of looking at what are the causes of this, and then we do a lot of interviews with experts and theorizing it. And the first conclusion they come to is how much pornography is affecting people's interest in having sex. Right, it's that pornography is becoming a substitute for people. And there's growing numbers of people who are feeling that I actually don't need a person, right? Because I've got pornography. Right? I can satisfy all my needs and desires through this vehicle. And that it's, you know, that motivation for a teenager, you know, I guess for a long time ago, it was, what was a teenager's motivation for getting a car? It was to like win the girl, right? And there's what drove a lot of young people is, you know, underneath it all is kind of sex, right? All that's disappearing because it's a much easier form, it's accessible. You know, why would you go through all these hoops and climb all these ladders to, you know, win the girl when someone who's more attractive is, you know, of course older, you know, older than, you know, 15, 16, is right there on your phone. Right, and so, yeah, pornography is really driving a lot of this, and that it's really shaping our culture. And another thing to share with you, how much pornography is shaping society. Thank you. And so, they do these studies. So they found on one pornography site alone, humanity has dedicated 4.5 billion hours, and this is in 2016, right? To give you, that's like these big numbers, what do these mean? What do they mean? For reference, that's twice as much as humanity has existed on Earth. Right, all that time combined. You know, so it's like, you know, you could go really deep down that rabbit hole. Like, what are the implications of this? Where it's safe to say that pornography is subtle and non-subtle ways really shaping people. Another reference. So, what does that look like? It's 44,000 people every minute. New visitor, new visitor, new visitor, new visitor. There's so many people. Right? This is on one website alone. Right? Just, you know, I stopped thinking about it at that point. It's like I can't wrap my head around it. It's so.
This is covering the Western world, covering the whole world.
This is from one pornography website.
Covering the whole world. Though.
Yes, it's, you know, and it's the most popular pornography website. And so, you know, their reach is worldwide.
And it's in English.
It's in English, yeah. It's probably translated into main languages. I wouldn't know.
What's it called? What is the name of the website?
Pornhub. This is Pornhub.
Okay, Pornhub.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Pornhub.
Yeah, you don't need to look that up.
It's so it's a reference. It's
Yeah.
a reference.
I took it, I could name the website, but I didn't because these kind of things tend to spark curiosity. But we're talking about it anyway, right? So Pornhub is the most popular website, or pornography, or popular as in most visited pornography website.
So that's the one you're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about, right? And also, then there's a company that owns Pornhub, and they actually own like a monopoly of pornography websites. So like within their portfolio, I think they receive like I don't know, it's, you know, more than 85% of all pornography traffic goes through this one company who owns this portfolio of pornography websites. They have huge control over the industry. And the other thing for me personally that's really worrying about how pornography is shaping our culture is this push to sexualize young people people at younger and younger ages. And so pornography, one of the qualities of it is it's always for this push for something novel. It's a push for something new and exciting and often taboo or the boundary of acceptable. And so the natural direction of that is sexualizing young people, right? That there's a whole genre of pornography of like 18. It's this 18 in America, probably Europe similar. It's like the youngest age that's you can legally have sex with someone and not get in trouble, right? It's like, okay, you're an adult, 18, and then 17 in 360 days, that's no, right? And then so there's this whole like, okay, 18, right? It's like this youngest age that you can sexualize without getting in trouble. And so of course there's like a desire to push beyond that. And so, that's why child pornography is such a horrible epidemic. Right? I'm not going to go into that so much, but it's like the direction that this goes in, and then you can't. It's the natural. You create this world, this fantasy world on your computer, and it doesn't stay there. Right? You naturally bring this with you wherever you go, and so you sexualize the world around you. And so this is seeping into our culture where these kinds of things are happening. And then there's this relationship between pornography and prostitution as well. There's this idea of bringing your fantasy world into real life. Is that more than ever before, child prostitution, child sexual slavery is such a problem. Right? This didn't grow separately on its own naturally. This is completely driven by pornography. Because there's this push to sexualize, wanting to sexualize, and then you create this fantasy world, and in fantasy, it just becomes not enough. So you want to experience what you fantasize about in real life, and that's how this whole industry has developed. Right. Pornography is best friends. Right. So all that, very alarming. But I added this section because for me personally, this is the thing that really breaks my heart. All that's sad, but this tears me to pieces. Right, to see the kind of impact that pornography is having in the community that I care so much about. Right, and so this is the thing that has me do crazy stuff like leave my house for 2 months, right, and to speak with people and to spend hours and hours, late nights. It's because not being able to rest, knowing how much pain people are in because of this issue. Right, and then it's really tearing people apart. Right, and so Uncle David, he referenced some statistics that we took in. So usually, we speak at a lot of workshops, a lot of camps. We speak to a lot of young people in our movement. Every year, I live in Korea, so it's very easy for me to GTGY. It's this 1,000+ workshop they do for high school and university students from around the world. Right, and so they do it in Cheongpyeong. So I go there for a day to speak. Right, so I've been doing it the past 3 years, and every time I go, I do surveys. For all the participants, and this is young first and second gen in our movement around the world, and then we go speak at workshops in different places, and so we collect data, and we ask questions, what's your experience measuring, what's your experience of pornography, how has it affected you? So one of these questions we ask is, within the past 6 months, how often have you intentionally accessed pornography? But not by accident, but on purpose, and then it's ABCD, it's every day, once a week, multiple times a week, once a month. Never, it's say covering all the bases, and then this is the kind of numbers that we found. Right, this is the young people within our church community, our Blessed Family community, is that at least once in the past 6 months they're on purpose looking at pornography, and then even for females, almost half. Right, this is something that so many people have some form of relationship with, and this can be varying degrees of severity. Right, this is some people. Even being in Cheongpyeong, they're so compelled, they're looking at pornography every day in Cheongpyeong. Right? This is some people that they're just curious about sex. They just got matched and they want to know how does, I'm going to have sex with this person eventually. I need to learn about this. And so the pornography is becoming their form of reference. Right? So this just illustrates the lack of conversation around this thing. It's so important to have. And how many people that are being sucked into this world. And furthermore, so 63%, they try to quit, but then they fail. That's my experience. And so many people, they're I really want to break free from this, and I just can't do it. And then 46%, their first exposure is at such a young age, between 11 and 13. And then vast, overwhelming majority, they never share with their parents about any of this that's going on in their life. so many young people, there's such a, so why, there's this question, why are young people not getting blessed? There's a lot going on about why that is, right? A huge influence of that is pornography. It's so heartbreaking how many young people we'll talk to, how many young men we'll talk to who, everything's going really well, like they're local CARP president, they're just really good people. And they're like, why aren't they making efforts to get blessed yet? Is they feel so unqualified because they're struggling so much in this area. They're struggling so much with pornography. And there's that. And then there's the porn cheapens sex so much. By something so amazing, it turns it into a transaction. It turns it into just a physical interaction. And so just hours, decades and hours being trained about this is what sex is. It's like people don't even see the vision for what they could possibly have. And so they aim so low in their life, and then blessing has no appeal for them. And then, so even blocking people from receiving the blessing, and then, seeing blessings break because of sexual issues, it's so common. And pornography is really damaging, not just like the quality of the relationship, but the existence of relationships. Blessings break because of this issue. And it's just and then people don't know about it. It's so devastating. Right. How are we doing with that? So, as High Noon, we talk about these things. They need to be talked about, right? Because the kind of community that we really want is these read that, okay? It's the kind of things that we really want, and to break away from these really painful things, it takes connection, it takes community. Right? So that's why we're doing this. So I want to close with what is it we're really championing in this kind of High Noon culture that we're talking about. We talked about light, we talked about shadows, and what's the way to access this in our lives? And so, for us, this is like, we fight to the death for these things, right? It's really a life of honesty, right? And that's the starting place of any relationship, is being able to tell the truth about what's going on. It's fundamental. And then and reciprocating, and the response to that is grace. And it's really something we're advocating for, is that there's a lot of painful things happen in our blessed families, right? And so many people are scared to let someone in on what's going on. If people at church knew, that my husband's sleeping on the couch, right, and I'm here, for example, right? So just providing more grace for other people, right? And then this is that experience of real love, like when you can tell the truth and be reciprocated in grace and love. That's like a feeling of liberation and cleansing, right? And that's like the starting place. It's not just this, but really advocating for commitment to integrity, right? And then commitment to growth, commitment to, this is where I'm at, but then, I have this ideal, and then I'm here, and that's, there's these things I'm going to do in order to bridge that gap. And then this commitment to accountability. I think accountability is such a beautiful thing. What accountability allows for is it allows for the ups and downs of life. It acknowledges that life is cyclical. We go through some times of everything's great and some times of challenge. And we have this culture of like the big confession, where I know it takes so much courage to share honestly and tell the truth. This morning I had someone text me. I've known him for years. He texted me and said, "Hey Sammy, it's taking me a long time. Can we talk about, I'm struggling with pornography." This is this morning. Right? I know how much courage that takes. It's such a scary thing to do. And but kind of breaking away from the attitude of like one and done, but having like continued conversations. Right? So that's what accountability allows for. It says, "Oh, so yeah, you did really great last week. How are you now?" And implied by that is like, potentially you could not be doing so well right now. How are you? And that's really such an amazing gift to be given, the space to still struggle. And so I love so much about Uncle David, right, is that he provides accountability for me. Sometimes, I travel 2 weeks at a time away from, by myself, away from home, and then Uncle David will call me, be like, Sammy, how are you doing with pornography? Right? And then in the beginning, I was like, excuse me, I'm Sammy Uyama, right? I work for High Noon, but it's such a liberating gift for me, right? That I'm the guy that High Noon is 2 dudes, me and Andrew. This is why I'm championing for a whole worldwide church community, and then to have someone that's willing to accept that, that I also go up and down. Right? It's been a long time since I looked at pornography. It's been a long time since I masturbated. But I've had times within the past 6 months where I can see myself, the line's over there. Maybe I'm over here. I kind of see myself swaying a little back, a little towards that way. And so having someone check in on me, and I can be like, oh yeah, actually now that I think about it, I'm swinging a little bit. It's such a liberating thing for me. All right. Last thing I want to end with. Kind of another reference to this idea of this kind of culture is this concept of restoration. That this is for me growing up, I heard about restoration, but it's just a theoretical thing. It was really boring, it was suffering, and had nothing to do with my life. It existed in the Bible, right? And that's where restoration was. But then, recognizing that restoration is it's God's gift for us. And the idea of being restored is that you had a starting place, and then you went somewhere else, and then restored, coming back to your original value. And that God didn't expect us to be perfect, right away. That even God gave Adam and Eve a command, but then it wasn't that they messed up and then I end humanity. But God created this possibility of coming back to that original place. And that's what we're all here for, we're all trying to do, right? That individually in our own lives, that we have this opportunity. It's not if I mess up then everything is gone. I don't have all these wonderful things I can no longer have. But everybody has this ability to come back to where God wants them to be, and to have all these beautiful things, to create a beautiful marriage. And I mention this specifically because I know what people deal with just in our blessed families. I'm speaking to so many people, I'm talking to individually. I know, blessings break, right? People get molested. Right? People have really painful experiences growing up. There's just a lot of things, right? And that there's people, suicide, right? This idea that someone can feel so hopeless and lost for the future, right? That really pains me more than anything else, is to hear the people in our faith, in our church, that feel no hope for themselves, feel so lost that they have to take their own life. Right? I knew God when, right? And it's so painful for me to hear. I can't imagine what it was like for you guys, right? Anyway, so there's still always there's hope, and that's what this kind of provides, right? Okay. All right. So that's all that I have time to give you guys tonight. I want to make a pitch for on day after tomorrow. We're going to be in Finland, and we have a whole day to speak, and that's really everything that we have available to give to blessed families. Right? It's the evening is how much can you actually do in 3 hours? You have to have a whole day, right? So really want to invite you guys, if you're able to attend, please come. It'll be so exciting to see you guys. We'll have so much. This is very educating. It's me talking, right? But the Saturday programs, it's really nurturing an experience for everyone there, to not just talk about honesty, grace, integrity, accountability, but actually walk away having felt that and experienced that. So please, if you please come if you're able to. I know it's hard, it's not easy, it's a different country, right? But, if you feel, please come, right? Like, damn the exams on Monday. Alright, so I want to welcome up Andrew. He wants to share some more of kind of what we have available for you guys, and then just to wrap everything up. So welcome up Andrew Love!